Okay, so I think we can get started. We'll kind of go slow. Everything will be recorded as well, so everyone will be able to catch up. Um, First of all, welcome. Welcome to this session. We're going to be talking about youth repair awareness through play, a couple of different programs from around the globe. Um, My name's Jason Naumann. I'm there in the middle. I've been working with two libraries as a volunteer for about 10 years. Started Rockwood Common, which operates a tool library and a Skillshare. We're actually operating out of a mobile box truck right now and moving into a classroom equipped space in the next couple of weeks here. And I'm out in Portland, Oregon. Um, and then I'll pass it over to Holly, one of my co-presenters.
Hi. It's so nice to see everyone here. That was a really inspiring introduction. My name's Holly Shader. I live in the beautiful Hudson Valley of New York State in the US, and I am a retired science teacher. And I've been involved with repair cafes since 2013, and we have had a take-apart table on and off throughout the years as we have volunteers to man it and to organize it. Um, so, Jason, am I introducing or talking about what we do?
So we're gonna kind of walk through the rest of our presentation. We're just doing quick hellos, and then we'll let
Okay,
Alan present first, if that
that sounds good. So
sounds
that's
good.
me, Alan.
Hi, I'm Alan from the UK. I'm in Hull, which is in the north of England. Um, I founded a Library of Things in Hull from my garage, and then it grew into quite a big organization. We've got about 3,000 members, about 1,500 items that we lend, um, and we've been running for about 5 years. During that time, I got involved in the circular economy. So we've done repair cafes. We've got a monthly repair cafe that's running really well. And then we started a kids ravage club, and that's kind of where we're what we're talking about today, I think. So yeah, ravaging. So we came up with a club which was to take basically e-waste that was going to be recycled anyway, and we kind of made it make a little trip first to us, so we could let kids take it apart. Now, the idea of the Ravage Club was really to get kids to understand that things aren't magic. Basically, they have technology inside, and they work in some way. And We also wanted to get the parents involved in this. So it was basically a kids club where they bring their parent along, and the parent enjoys the process as well. Um, and it worked really well. We did it in a garden setting, which was quite unusual, I think. So it was an outdoor activity, and we had a lot of people interested in joining in and taking things apart. And the idea really was to learn about what's inside, how it functions, maybe work out what went wrong with it, if if it failed functional testing and wasn't able to be resold or something through uh, uh, our recycling centres, then what went wrong with it, and that was always an interesting conversation. And then we were able to disseminate the parts into metals, plastics, and it also helps with recycling. And so we're able to talk to the children about recycling, and they found it really interesting grabbing the stuff and moving it into a bucket that said metals And so it's, they kind of were confirming the different types. What is this? What is this? Which was very interesting. And then we also were able to take some of those parts and use them in our repair cafe. So, if we knew we repaired a lot of computers, we would be grabbing the RAM, the hard drives, and things like that, and putting them into our stock. So when it came to our repair cafes, we had a stock of items to help with that. So looking at the whole circular economy and trying to work out, people borrow stuff from us, they break as well. So if we can get parts for that as well. And then we started talking to our recyclers and saying, okay, when you're giving us things, we really want these, and these, because they're the things kids love taking apart, but also they're the things that we need to repair. Um, so that whole conversation started going. And also the kids love it. They absolutely love taking technology apart. It's like something they're not allowed to do at home, or some of them do, and they get into trouble for that. So having a safe space where they can come and just completely dismantle something seemed to be something that they really enjoyed. Um, and we want to make them the next generation of repairers. So it's really important that they take this first step. We thought to be able to dismantle something, and it's been assembled in a factory, and we want to give them the opportunity to try and work out how to dismantle it without breaking it, basically. That doesn't always go to plan, and I think the kids do in love breaking things as well. Do you want to move on to the next slide? So some of the things that it invoked was a sense of community. We saw a lot of people come again and again with their kids, which was really interesting, and they would meet people there. And they would be really interested in bringing their own items. So some of them would start bringing broken things themselves to take apart, and they'd get really excited about that. The interesting conversations was always a young person picking up a VHS recorder and going, "Dad, what's this?" And he's going, "What do you mean you don't know what a VHS recorder is?" Those kind of conversations were really interesting. And we had some really unusual things like with valves in them, and explaining how technology's evolved is always a good story. And then we also found that a lot of people were interested in our repair cafe, so they'd hear about it through the conversation, and they'd go, "Can we get involved in that?" So it kind of led to some people volunteering, which was really good. And then, yeah, mindfulness. So I didn't realize how mindful it was going to be, not only for the kids, but for the parents. So when the kids had had enough of taking stuff apart, they'd go off and play in the garden. This was a community garden we were in, and there'd be a sea of adults still taking stuff apart, and they just found it so mindful to just be able to sit there in silence or with some other people and just dismantle something. And I remember taking a photo, and there was no kids in it. It was just adults, and they were all just at the tables taking things apart, and they loved the activity as well. And then we've got some resources that we'll make available, which we're really looking around the health and safety of taking things apart. So how to make sure capacitors were dead when we were dismantling things, what PPE the kids wore, and the fact that a lot of things inside things are sharp. Laptops have got screens that are made of glass, and so how to keep the kids safe when we were doing the activity.
Great. Thanks, Alan.
No
And
worries.
those resources are available if you jump over to this event again from the lobby, you can see those there, and they'll also be shared out with some other resources at the end of the summit. We run a scavengers club out here in Rockwood, directly inspired by Alan. I saw their program through some social media posts and said we should do that. So this is a photo of some kids there. We operate entirely, like I said, out of a box truck. So that's our library there in purple, and we run our take apart table there under the blue tent. It allows the kids to have some time and engage with repair, and again, just fun taking stuff apart. And so we can talk to the parents a little bit more and explain some of our programs. For anyone who isn't aware of how a tool library works, we've got over 2,000 tools right now. Those are free to borrow for about a week at a time. So it's a little bit of a complicated concept. Sometimes we have to deal with language barriers in our community as well. So it's really helpful to have kids occupied during that. Um, so the most popular things, like Alan said, the things that you really are just totally black boxed, things like well, toasters, you can kind of guess what a toaster looks like inside, but it's amazing once you peel the shell off a toaster, how kids' eyes just light up and they really understand what those mechanisms are. You can talk about things like safety and electricity as well, and see how those heat coils move around. Springs are very popular. We love to use DVD players and anything that has those kind of plastic grease-free gear mechanisms. They're just really fun for the kids to see. Could talk a little bit about optical lasers. We don't ever light those up, but and then motors. I mean, anything with a motor is pretty fascinating for a kid if you can add a little bit of power to that. We do work a little bit with clock radios, and again, if you're attached to a repair program, that's a great way to source parts and things. So um, because we're a tool library, we have a lot of tools that we need repaired. And so we do let the kids kind of take them apart and pull out some of the switches and those reusable components, but we don't get into anything that's real greasy. So fortunately, a lot of those tools, the newer tools, will kind of have those gears contained within a separate reciprocating saws is kind of the big example that I use. All that grease is kind of contained because they have electrical components. So you can start that process, but you need to keep an eye on the kids so they don't keep unscrewing past that certain point. Um, Otherwise, it gets a little messy. When we do work with a little bit older kids, we can give them plastic gloves and kind of make the space a little bit safer. But it's tricky to get little kids that are walking up and don't really fit into plastic gloves. So we just kind of avoid a lot of those tools. Anything with glass, mirrors, rusty metal, pretty common sense stuff. But just be thinking about older things can be a little bit dangerous. And hide the hammers. As soon as there's a hammer on the table, everybody just wants to start smashing things needlessly, and then you got parts flying all over the place. So sometimes it seems like, you got to get things a little bit more apart. Don't get to that point. I wouldn't recommend it. Unless you're, trying to set up some kind of a break room or a safe space where people can just smash things for their mental health. Um, Alan touched on a number of these things, but it really does open up conversation to introduce kids and adults to some of these concepts about repair. Things that are often, there's hidden screws you're going to find. Plastic housing is going to be glued together. Intentionally engineering those things so that they're harder to repair. So really that comes up a lot, and kids ask those questions, and it's good to have them asking those questions. We try to use a reduce, then reuse, then recycle mindset and try and engage with the kids on that level. How can we reduce not just the number of things that we own by buying less and borrowing more, but how can we reduce the amount of material that goes into some of these things? Stuff like tabletop or TV top antennas have a tiny amount of actual usable material. They're almost entirely housing, and it's for aesthetics. So talking to kids about that a little bit can be helpful. Um, with, long term, maybe they'll end up engineering something that's a little bit simpler and a little less wasteful. When it comes to reuse, motors are really popular. Components, all kinds of different components that we can pull out. We do save some things for some partners we have that do artwork and stuff, but that's pretty common and it piles up pretty quickly. And then ultimately, we do a little bit of recycling work ourselves, but mostly we work with our partners so that things that we get kind of go back to them. So we talk a little bit about that. I have a material recovery guide that was provided to us by Habitat for Humanity. And so that's available in the resources as well. So we talk about that, especially with the older kids. Um, some of the things that we like to consider is, bringing some jumper wires, some 9-volt batteries, a multi-tool, um, a multimeter, so you can engage with those things a little bit more. You don't have to have those elements. You don't need to have those more technical things if that's not where you're at, or you don't have the skill set, or maybe you don't know how a multimeter works. I don't always know how a multimeter works when I think I need to. Uh, but I think it's really interesting to see when we start pulling out motors and then we can plug them in. The kids' eyes just light up once it starts moving, and then we say, "Hey, you can actually take that home and give it to your parents, and you can get set up with your own little battery and maybe build something at home." So, um, and then we've, like I said, that using some of these things artistically with sort of a build a thing activity where we take the ergonomic tool handles and add plastic elements to them and talk about, how would you make your own tool? What's the thing that you would want to do with this? And again, then we source a lot of our stuff from the Habitat for Humanity Restore. They have a really good scrap program, so we just kind of plugged right into that. They've been really, really great partners for us. But looking for Repair Cafe or any thrift or resale, there's so much stuff out there. It's not hard to find things. Just make sure that either they're ready to take them back once they're taken apart, or you have that next step of the chain figured out. And then I'll pass it over to Holly to talk a little bit about the take apart table. Holly, looks like you're
Unmute.
muted.
There we go. Always forget something. Um, so yeah, we do a take apart table that was started at the new Paltz Repair Cafe shortly after we started there, so probably about 2014. Um, and it was really the initial idea was just to let kids take things apart, practice using tools. Um, and seeing what things look like inside, seeing if we can figure out what makes them work and what they're made of, because everything's made of all kinds of different stuff. And what we found is that it really starts to help kids and everyone just change the relationship they have with their own stuff. You know, the generation now and for probably the past 30 years has pretty much, when something breaks, throw it away, get a new one. And we're really changing mindsets as we let people take more ownership that they really do own what they have and they really can work on it. I mean, especially if it's already broken, you can't break it more, maybe you can fix it. And it's interesting to see what's inside of things. We're also finding that kids don't have the same relationship with tools that like I had growing up, maybe you had growing up. Um, I was allowed to play with tools. And I grew up taking things apart and putting things back together and redesigning things. And it's, a lot of, for some kids, the first time they've held a hammer or a screwdriver or a pair of pliers is at our take apart table, where they're finding out how the tools work. So it kind of gives them a sense of empowerment that they're learning new skills and can do new things and exploring what things are made of and how things go together. The stuff that we have at our take apart table are generally things that have been deemed beyond repair. And so it doesn't matter if we can't put it back together, we know how to take it apart. Um, we've also done a number of different things, not just taking things apart, but also exploring circuitry. Once I am a retired science teacher, and I had done a activity with electrical circuits using potatoes and LED light bulbs. And so we explored, I have thought this would be great to do at our take apart table. And so we explored, how do you design a circuit and what are some of the different aspects of what makes them work, and learning about that. Also have worked with, magnets and and mechanical things. I know Jason said taking apart electrical tools can be messy. Yes, they can, but they have really fun gears in them. And for a lot of kids, they've never seen a gear and mo actually using a gear outside of maybe on their bicycle. So, it's another way of exploring how things work. And motors are always fun to take apart and see what makes a motor run. We also in New Paltz have a reuse center, and we've had volunteers come down with things that have been donated to the center with an idea of doing some kind of upcycling craft, making jewelry, making toys, different things out of things that other folks have decided is trash and they throw it away and they're still usable. So it's a lot of sense of fun and exploration, um, and giving kids opportunity to hold tools in their hands and see how they work, finding out how to use a screwdriver, a hammer, um, pliers, and different things. So it's just a great opportunity where you can really take it in a lot of different directions depending upon what you have at your site and what kind of volunteers you have. At one of ours, there was a kid who was, I think, 7 or 8. It was a little just interested in electronics, and he ended up attracting the interest of one of our coaches who was a retired IBM and electrical engineer. And they spent a good 45 minutes to an hour taking apart electrical. There was a radio, there was a laptop, and looking at what was inside of them and what makes them work and what the important um, structures were inside of it. So you really can take this in a lot of different directions depending upon what you have at your site and what the interest of the individuals that you have involved with them.
Great. We're going to open up for questions. There's a couple in the chat that I wanted to highlight. So, Alan, there was a question about what age group you typically have participating in your club.
I have had a 1-year-old trying to hold a screwdriver, but typically our age group is it's around. It's aimed at between 6 and 12, that kind of age. But we do have we have had children up to the age of 16 come along, um, and we put out the equipment based on that age group. So the things they can take apart, we just hoist it all onto a table and let them decide. And we will advise if we think something might be too dangerous for the age of the child that's trying to take it apart. If it is a laptop and it's got a glass screen, we may go with them to help them repair that as volunteers. Um, but yeah, I did see that message and I saw that it was also thinking about how you keep them involved in repair. There are a number of organisations that offer kits specifically designed for schools that you can break in a way, and then you can give it to a child and allow them to try and fix it. So you actually it's designed to be broken in numerous different ways, and you can break it and then give it to them to repair. So there are programs like that that are available within schools, and schools can order those kits and have clubs to enable that. But yeah, it's a very interesting topic to see how you could try and keep them involved in that all the way through school, because they will get um, tied up in school with what's going on in there, and if you can keep that going in school, that's a really good thing.
Yeah, for sure. There was also a question I saw about whether or not simple hand tools are sufficient. We typically I kind of have a drill on hand if it's needed, but we tend to just use screwdrivers for the most part, maybe some wrenches. I have the added benefit of a complete tool library on site anytime we're running the program. So if something comes up, I can say, "Give me a minute," and I can run inside and grab it.
Yeah, I think it's quite unusual, interesting to see that there's a number of new screws that have come out specifically to stop you going inside things, to protect you, which, yeah, I get that from a liability point of view, but sometimes it does hinder repair, especially in the household when you've probably got two different types of screwdriver, and you go to look at the device and it's got a star bit with a, a security bit in the middle, so to prevent you from dismantling it. Always find that challenging. But like you say, we're a tool library as well, so it's great to be able to have those tools and go, yes, we can.
Sure. And I would say if you're using the very small screwdrivers, the kinds that usually come in like a little 5 pack or so, have a couple of those because if kids are they do tend to snap sometimes.
Yeah,
But it's a good opportunity to let kids, think about the very simple mechanical design of screws and drivers and how those things are engineered to work together.
yeah. I always say that a screwdriver is just for screwing and not for levering. But we do have
Mhm.
some extra large screwdrivers specifically for them to have a go if they get to a point where, we do have a number of um, kids who want to do it all on their own. They don't want, the adults get, just let me, I want to do this. And so you kind of, you can see them struggling with a screw or something, and you just give them basically the hammer, but maybe not the hammer. Maybe it's something to lever it, and you watch them while they're doing it, making sure they're not getting their fingers trapped in things. But yeah, sometimes they just want to do it themselves, and yeah, that's great. I totally applaud that.
I do want to be mindful of time, and I'm going to drop a link into the chat to return to the lobby in case anyone needs to jump out. But there was another question about someone, Margot, looks like asked if you could comment on the mechanics or ratio of adults to kids and maybe dealing with kids who aren't as engaged. Anyone got a comment on that?
So we usually have, generally it's like one, we usually don't have more than 4 children at the table at a time with one adult. If we get more than that, then we'll try and find another set of hands, adult eyes, just to make sure that everyone's playing safely, particularly if some of the kids are smaller. We've had children as young as like 3 actively trying to work on things and take things apart. You just really want to make sure that they're working safely. So, but I think like a 1 to 5 ratio is generally about what we have, max.
Yeah, and I guess you've got to look at the items you're taking apart. So as well,
True.
you might put some easier stuff out if there's more kids. But our group, our Ravagers sessions, ran with a parent, and so it was a kid and a parent basically. So it made it a bit easier because you had a responsible adult there, so you could leave them alone with stuff. So there was only probably one or two facilitators there, and the rest were parents and children. Um, so from that perspective, that worked quite well for us. But we're very interested in what you guys have done in terms of having a table. And I'm thinking I'm having a gaming session in the summer, which is retro gaming. And I'm thinking about putting a fix-it table. Now I've heard your stories about the fix-it table, so that's really interesting.
Thinking about repair, Tom asked, are there things that kids like to repair specifically? We don't do a lot of repair at my program, so I
Yeah,
can't really speak for that.
not really repair. I mean, taking apart, they love taking apart consoles, and there's a sea of consoles that go through to recyclers. They get so many consoles, old Xboxes, old PlayStations, and then, like you say, anything geared, anything that's got motors, gears, a CD tray, you can actually make the gear run. and see the whole mechanism function, and they love all that kind of stuff. I've never
Right.
motorized it. That's a great idea to get a battery and actually put it on. I've only ever wound it myself, and they've seen the whole mechanism spin. But yeah,
Right. Yeah, they make these pretty nifty. They're basically jumper wires with a 9-volt attachment on the end, so then you can just kind of plug it into
ah,
things.
real. I'll definitely be giving that a go.
And then there was a question from Kimberly. How do you decide if something can be repaired or not? I think kind of similar question. If I don't know how to fix it, that's kind of where that stops on our end. Um, we do tend to pull out components and keep those and reuse those as much as we can. But specifically to working with the kids, if it's a toaster, we can show them how to adjust the spring and we can take off the spring and show them why it doesn't work in that situation. So those mechanical things we tend to work with, but we don't do a whole lot in my program specifically with electronics.
Yeah, once the coaches have, a couple of coaches have taken a look at something and said, nope, this is beyond, then it comes to us.
Yeah, I think it's all about the abilities of our volunteers in the end, and you know, if they're doing repairs, we've got some that are very capable when it comes to microelectronics, and some that will, you know, look with a thermal imaging camera, see if they can spot components that may have failed, and then that's as far as they can go.
Right. Well, again, thanks everybody for coming. Holly, Alan, and myself are available to talk about this more and answer questions. So you can find us through the lobby and find us to chat there. Our emails are also I posted them into the presentation, and I'll add that deck over to the resource page as well. So thanks everyone. See you around.
Everyone.
Thank you.